Today we're reading a book called Miss Gorski. I think I have the wiggle fidgets. This sounds funny. It sounds like you have to pee. The wiggle fidgets. Miss Gorski, I think I have the wiggle fidgets. I'll show you the pictures too, okay? David Sheldon, you are distracting your neighbor again, said Miss Gorski with her serious voice. You're going to have to stop making that noise with your pencil. Ugh, he's probably tapping. I hate that tippity tapping sound and that clickety clack with the pen. Drives me nuts. I tried to explain that the only way I wanted to... Wait, blah, blah, blah. Try that again. I tried to explain that the... Okay, let's try that again. I tried to explain that I only wanted to see how many times I could roll my pencil to the very edge of my desk without it falling off, but Miss Gorski interrupted me. She ain't trying to hit at my friend. I do not need an explanation, David, but I do need to pay you. I need you to pay attention in class. Yeah, what I need you to not do is worry about your pencil rolling off the desk. I need you to pay attention, but I feel you. I be having a struggle too sometimes, you know, a little struggle. Once again, everyone in the class was staring at me. I get the feeling Miss Gorski doesn't like me very much. I can tell by the way her voice changes when she speaks to me. It's her speaking to David voice. I know that I bug her. I just don't know how to stop. The problem is, I'm not thinking about paying attention when I'm not paying attention. If I were thinking about paying attention when I'm not paying attention, I would definitely pay attention. I want to pay attention, but it's just so hard when an exciting idea pops into my head. I got that same problem. Like, I will straight be talking about squirrels, and then I'll hear about peanuts that they're... Anyway, see, like I'm doing it now. Nothing else seems important to where... Blah, blah, blah. Try that again. Nothing else seems important when there are ideas to think about. This is almost like a Dr. Seuss book. It's got some tongue twisters going on here. Can you see the pictures? His cheeks are red from everybody looking at him. I know that can be embarrassing, but you know, I be having that struggle sometimes myself. Every day, I do something that upsets Mrs. Gorski. I never mean to do it, but it happens anyway. Like that time we had our first fire drill. I really made her mad that day. Some kid is trying to do something. Ms. Gorski told us to stand in a single file on the line in the parking lot. I really tried to pay attention and follow instructions, but I had a really good idea. I wanted to see how long I could stand on one foot with my eyes closed and both hands on my shoulders while hopping in place while standing in single file on the line in the parking lot. You was tripping, David. Get your life, David. I mean, it's simple. Stand in the line. I mean, it sounds simple and all, but, you know, I get it. I was following Miss Gorski's directions, except when I was on one foot until I fell down. Maybe she got upset because our class was the only one that wasn't standing during the fire drill. The whole class just fell down fooling with you, David. Well, we see now that standing on one foot with your eyes closed and hands on your shoulders, it's just not very successful, okay? But that was nothing compared to yesterday in the cafeteria. It all started with a pudding cup and an idea. I wasn't trying to make a mess. I just wanted to see how much pressure the lid could take before, well, you can imagine. I didn't see Mrs. Gorski standing behind me, and I didn't think a pudding cup would make such a mess. What possesses you to do such things, David? Miss Gorski asked with her extra frustrated speaking to David voice. I tried to explain I didn't think the pudding would shoot that far, but she interrupted me. David, I will be sending a note home to your parents. I know the struggle. I got kids myself. I don't know why I do what I do. I can always see the mistakes I make after I make them, but before they make their blah, blah, blah. I don't know why I do what I do. I can always see the mistakes I make after I make them, but before they're mistakes, they just seem like great ideas. I wish I could stop myself. I wish I could think a little more before I test my great ideas. I wish I didn't get on everybody's nerves. The night I listened while my parents talked about Miss Gorski's letter. David just has the wiggle fidgets. I had the wiggle fidgets when I was a kid. I had so many ideas bouncing around in my mind that it was impossible for me to sit still. My dad told my mom. Of course, he gets it from his father. When Miss Gorski wants to meet with us Monday afternoon, my mom replied, I have until Monday to think of a plan, and I know what I have to do. I have to find a way to stop the wiggle fidgets. I know I'm not the only kid struggling with the wiggle fidgets. This could be my greatest discovery yet. David, you've been messing up, Punk Slice. I spent most of Saturday afternoon brainstorming. I'm great at that. Brainstorming is one of my strengths. I have to be careful that none of my ideas for the wiggle fidgets will be distracting to me or my class or Miss Gorski. In other words, I have to think about consequences. I hope my parents and Mrs. Gorski will be proud of me for a change. I don't know what's going on with his glasses. He ain't always had glasses on for this whole book, did he? I don't know. Oops. Monday after school, I went to my locker to get what I needed for the meeting. My notebook and my box of items that helped me with the wiggle fidgets. I found my parents and Mrs. Gorski in the classroom. Using my most serious voice, I said, Mom, Dad, Mrs. Gorski, on Saturday I discovered exactly what my problem is. I learned some important information that has inspired me to come up with a solution for this very serious but common struggle. I looked at my dad and I said, the problem is I have what's called the wiggle fidgets. It's something that you can inherit from your parents or you could just have it. My dad had the wiggle fidgets when he was a kid. The difference is I've come up with a possible cure, or at least it's something that might help a little. It's an all-day Saturday to develop it. My parents and Mrs. Gorski just listened. Come up with a few things that help me pay attention better, I announced, while spreading note cards on the table. These are my attentions card, patent pending. Oh, David is about to be on Shark Tank. Okay. If I put one of these cards on my desk, it will remind me to focus and leave the distracting ideas and thoughts alone. This way, Mrs. Gorski, you can save your voice and I can save myself from becoming embarrassed. Everyone in the class always becomes distracted when you ask me to pay attention. But it's not my only idea for the wiggle fidgets. I also have a timer that counts down silently. I've discovered that if I know exactly how long I need to pay attention, it keeps me from wondering about how long I need to pay attention. I couldn't believe it. Miss Gorski was actually smiling at me. She hadn't smiled at me for a long time. I have a feeling she likes my ideas. Really, David? It took a whole lot of note home for you to get these ideas together. Then, using my serious announcement voice, I said, for the super wiggly fidget days, I need to have something to do. Even if it's just a small something to fidget with, like this stress ball. I've noticed that when I fidget with the stress ball at home, it actually helps me pay attention. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I know it does. I hope Mrs. Gorski was still listening. Another way to help make the wiggle fidgets go away is to move just a little. Sometimes my legs feel like they're going to run away without me. If I could just erase that chalkboard or hand out papers, or better yet, run your papers to the school office, my legs might just not be so wiggly at my desk. I've also noticed that the more I get to move during recess, the less I move at my desk. Plus, recess seems to help my brain feel refreshed and ready to focus. I wanted to help Mrs. Gorski understand. Why Miss Gorski had to be the name, though? Like, couldn't be like Miss Johnson or something like that? Like something easier to pronounce? Gorski. I feel like I'm spitting on myself, okay? Well, that's all I have for today. I will be available to answer questions if anyone has them, I said as I collected my items. David, I am quite impressed, Miss Gorski announced in a voice that wasn't frustrated. I think your ideas would be wonderful. We will start using them tomorrow. Of course, we'll have to keep your box of ideas from becoming a distraction for the rest of the class, but I'm sure we can make this work. Your ideas might work well at home too, said Mom. David, you always come up with the most original ideas. You remind me of a kid that I used to know, my dad added with a smile. I'm like, all right, Daddy, so when it's time for me to get in time out, remember that kid you used to know. I know, Mrs. Gorski. I was thinking, I said, feeling quite confident. I think my ideas might help Jeremy too. He don't move around as much as I do, but I can tell he gets tired of sitting sometimes, especially during social studies. Oh God, I hated social studies. God, it was so boring. I also noticed that Karina becomes distracted by Tammy when he acts silly. And maybe some of the other kids in our class will wiggle and fidget less with a little help. I think your plan is going to help me manage the entire classroom's wiggle fidgets, Mrs. Gorski replied with a smile. I can remember when I had the wiggle fidgets, I couldn't wait to get up from my desk during science class to touch the project materials or look through the microscope. I can remember Mrs. Smith, my science teacher, telling me to sit still or I wouldn't get to do the science activity. Oh, now Mrs. Gorski can remember when she had the wiggle fidgets, but she had an attitude when our home slice had to wiggle fidget chicken. Now I get it though. I got 5 kids, I know. They all wiggle. They got ants in their pants. They got pants on fire. Anyway, Mrs. Gorski, you had the wiggle fidgets too, David? Many great minds come with the wiggle fidgets, she answered with a smile. I noticed she wasn't using her frustrated speaking to David voice anymore. Looks like we're coming up with some solutions to the problems here. So that was the end of the book, but that's the end of the story. But there is a note to caring adults. Fear is a great disabler. Fear is what keeps children from realizing their potential. It needs to be replaced with the feeling of, I know I can make progress if I keep trying, and boy, do I ever want to do that. One of the great goals of parents, teachers, and coaches should be to find areas in a child who might experience One of the great goals of parents, teachers, and coaches should be to find areas in a child in which a child might experience mastery. Then make it possible for the child to feel this potent sensation. The feeling of mastery transforms the child from reluctant, fearful learner to self-motivated player. The mistake that parents, teachers, and coaches often make is that they demand mastery rather than lead the children to it by helping them overcoming the fear of failure. I totally get that. Yo. You onto something, Dr. Edward Howell. That was Halloween. I don't know. It's been a long day. The best parents are great teachers. My definition of a great teacher is a person who can lead another person to mastery. All right. So there's a whole bunch of questions at the end of this that you might want to just buy the book and ask your class if you want to do all that. All right.